Welcome back to the Direct Response Podcast. I'm your host, Travis Ketchum, founder of Campaign Refinery, joined today by David Cartolano of Wealthy Inbox. How's it going, bud?
Hey, it's all good, man.
Yeah, so, there's a lot of kind of panic in the market right now about how do I get out of the promo tab and this and that. And yeah, this is sort of like Groundhog Day to a certain extent, right? And you have a bunch of different camps of people, but I think it's important that if you're like worried about your inbox placement or is your email getting where it's supposed to be, it's good to refresh ourselves on the block and tackle ABCs of email deliverability, right? And that starts with a solid foundation of email authentication. Now, I know there's a lot of people in groups. You're in Facebook groups. I'm in all kinds of different forums, back channels, and Skype groups, and more groups than I want to ever be in my entire life. But you'll always get that one Yahoo out there, and I'm not talking about the mailbox provider. You'll always get that one Yahoo out there that's saying, you just got to do DMARC, DKIM, and SPF, and it will inbox. Now, you and I both know that's not true, but we also know that it is a critical component of it. It is not a 1 or 0. Like, it's not if you do these, you will inbox. But inboxing is a heck of a lot easier if you do all these things, especially as you scale.
Yeah. And I've left some of those Facebook groups. I couldn't stand in there after a while. Like there were too many Yahoos for my liking. So yeah. And one of the things that I know that I've noticed I've been setting up these authentications, which is pretty much a fancy way of saying giving yourself a name tag. So Google, Yahoo, and AOL know that it's really you sending the emails. I've been doing this for years. And what I found is ever since the big update back in February 2024 with Google and Yahoo, you used to be able to authenticate your domain, and we'll get into that. You used to be able to follow these steps, and it would flip a switch, and people would go straight out of spam into straight out of spam into primary, straight out of promo into primary. And it was like magic back then. And there were other things you had to do, of course, to make sure you were getting your emails in front of people where they could actually find them. I found that doesn't work anymore. Now you have to have your emails authenticated to begin with. You can't start the alphabet without the ABCs, and that's what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, these have become the table stakes to even be in the conversation, I think, is another way to think about it. So let's run through, there's 3 that most people know about. We really kind of consider it 4 things nowadays as we are kind of rolling into ever-changing things from Gmail, which is the 800-pound gorilla in the room. Yeah. But let's start with kind of the basics. So if you want to kind of run us through the first couple, like maybe do DMARC and DKIM, and then we can do absolutely. SPF and BEMI from there.
Yeah, so I'm going to say a bunch of nonsensical words and a bunch of letters all together, and I'm not even going to tell you what they mean, because if you're listening to this, you shouldn't have to care about them. If you want, you can Google what they mean. But
or read our article down below. We have an article in the show notes.
Yeah.
If you want to get deep, we got it for you. Forget Google. Go straight to the source. We got you covered.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. So go and take a look at that, because that's going to give you better information than what some Yahoo says on Google. So DKIM, SPF, DMARC. So DKIM, that's one thing. SPF, that's another. DMARC, that's the third. Focusing on the first 2 mostly. If you go to, and this happened after the update, but if you go to, let's say you're using an email service provider platform, so like ActiveCampaign or ConvertKit or Kit or Keep or Campaign Refinery, they will have ways inside of the email platform to hit authenticate your domain, and they will show you how to do it. And they usually have an automated process. Now, that being said, that automated process might not do it right. So you do have to be careful when you're setting up the DKIM and SPF stuff, because occasionally it won't be set up right. Now, I've been in Campaign Refinery, and they do get it right, because it's copy and paste. All right. So I'm just going to say that. That's just my experience. I'm not calling out any other ESPs. All right. That's what you're going to get.
Basically, just to be clear, we've elected not to use the automated systems because the place that you host your domain the way that you can write to that is usually not standardized. And so therefore, a lot of things can go wrong. They also can change the way that they have that work as well. So we decided, hey, let's just spell out to you so you can copy and paste the record yourself. It may look daunting, but hey, here's the record. Can you hit Command or Control C? Can you hit Command or Control V? If you can do that, then you can do what we have, and it has a much higher reliability of working. Just wanted to clear the air as to why that is the way it is.
Yeah, and we're not saying that in like a condescending way, like, oh, all you have to do is copy and paste. No, but really, all you do have to do is copy paste. And if you do have an automated process inside of your email service provider that's like, we'll do it for you, elect to do the manual copy and pasting. Just please do it. I've seen them mess it up before. So you got to have that done for DKIM and SPF, all right? That gives you like a special little name tag to Google saying, look, my name is David. I'm sending. Here's the domain that I bought at davidcardellano.com, and I'm sending emails with this domain. Here's my name tag. I'm good. DMARC, okay? That's the third thing. The reason why I'm making it number 3 is because you got to set up DKIM and SPF first. You got to set that up first, because if you don't, it could cause hell in a handbasket with DMARC. So DMARC is a way of, Google the post office figuring out if someone's trying to impersonate you and take your name tag. That's all it is. And DMARC, what I like to do, I like to go to, if my email service provider does not have this integrated, which most of them don't, I like to go to DMARCian.com. I'll use their record wizard, and I will copy and paste. And again, check out the actual article for more details on this, because I don't want to walk through the process right now. But what I do is I copy and paste. I start with key equals none. Check the article on what that means. Okay. And then I leave it on P equals none for about 45 days. And then after I'm done with that, I change it to P equals reject. And you're like, David, you are speaking a different language. Okay, great. Read the article. All right. I promise it will clear things up. But those are the 3 things that I do for authentication. And you could consider it the trifecta. But there is a 4th thing that you can do once you've gotten all 3 of what I've talked about in line. So Travis, do you want to go on to the 3rd? Do you want to go on the 4th step of authentication?
Yeah, I do. But real quick about the DMARC component.
Yeah.
Just to be clear, there are 3 levels of policies. That's what the P equals means. You're setting a policy. You're basically telling the post office how much should the beatings continue until morale improves for anyone that doesn't have certified mail. And there's basically 3 tiers. So none is the loosest, which means please look for the certification, but if it doesn't exist, don't do anything different. Potentially let the impersonators through, but tell me about it. That is the key distinction about none. The second is quarantine. That is the next step up, which is basically saying, hey, tell me about it. And if they aren't signed, if you could please send it to spam, that would be terrific. Please and thank you. And reject is the straight up club bouncer, which is if they don't have the credentials, throw them in the alley and tell them to get lost, right? And so the higher level your policy, essentially, the more trustworthy you can potentially be as a sender, because you are taking an increasing level of ownership over email that comes from your domain. That is the core philosophy I want you to take away. And David, you are 100% right that if you don't do the other things, the SPF and the DKIM, no one's going to have the credentials. So if you go in and you say, hey, I heard I need DMARC, and I go in there and I set a reject policy because someone told me that was the best one, but I didn't do any of the other stuff, all mail, including stuff that you intend to send, gets thrown out into the alley by the bouncer. Okay? So this is why the order of operations is important. I just wanted to kind of give a clarification.
It's very important because I have made that mistake before where I dumped one of my very first clients, all of his emails into spam because I got this wrong. It was very embarrassing. So if you're listening to this, please, don't make our mistakes. Go and make your own. All right?
Yeah, we earned our scars.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. So we're going to have a whole nother segment specifically about DMARC, about how to set it up. We're rolling out a new tool that makes this really easy as well. So there's lots of other tools out there that are all great, but we have a cool tool that's free that I think people will enjoy. Anyway, so let's go on to number 4, which we've talked about before a little bit, but in this context, I do think it is moving from just a nice to have to more of an authentication piece because it's more difficult to achieve. And that is BEMI, which is mostly about making your brand logo show up when someone looks at who the sender is in their inbox from particular, when they use particular mailbox providers such as Google, specifically Gmail's WebView, or the mobile apps from Gmail. A bit with Apple, but they have their own process of setting up brands and getting it approved. But the reason that this is moving more into authentication territory, even though on the surface it appears to be a cosmetic option, is because to get BEMI at its full strength capacity with a verified certificate from a provider that has vetted you and made sure everything checks out, is that you must have an approved trademark to get BEMI at its full strength, full caffeinated, full duty, doing the Lord's work for you. So that part is expensive, time consuming, right? As the prerequisite to get that additional kind of expensive certificate that proves that your trademark is valid, that proves you are who you say you are. I went through this process recently myself. It includes taking photos of, using a mobile app to authenticate your driver's license and vetting a bunch of personal information. And because those 2 steps are lengthy, expensive, and cumbersome, the trust level goes up. Now, we always talk about deliverability here at Campaign Refiner about not looking like a spammer and looking as legit as possible. And if you think about from the mailbox provider, the increasing levels of difficulty for each level of authentication means you are in a smaller and smaller subset of senders who are doing all the things at their disposal to look, act, appear, and be legitimate. And the more legitimate you are, the more likely you are to inbox. So that is why we're going down this rabbit hole of all the different things you got to do, the increasing levels of complexity, and BEMI, I think, is going to be one of those, especially moving forward. So I know these videos sometimes have a time delay based on editing, but we're nearing the end of 2024 here. As we go into 2025, 2026, BEMI is going to be an increasing level of importance because it's so hard to get and because there's so much freaking email sent every day. The more you can do to prove that you are a real business who has staying power, the better off you're going to be as a sender. So that's my core deep philosophy. I don't know how you feel about BEMI, David, but I'm all in.
Yeah, I think BEMI is going to get easier as time goes on. So I know you described all of these steps, and to anyone listening to this, that might sound really daunting, and you're like, wow, why would I even waste my time with any of this stuff? Okay, look, totally fair. I would still get DKIM, SPF, and DMARC set up because that can be set up in an afternoon. And if you pay someone to do it, they can set it up in an hour.
Yeah. It may take a day or so for everything to flush through the rest of the world internet and be reflected, but the actual setup piece is minutes usually. So
exactly. But you pay them to do it right. You know what I mean? Yeah. So yeah. But BEMI, I do see it taking a place and becoming more prevalent, but it's going to get prevalent when it gets easier. So I think if you're listening to this and you are like SMB, right, small, medium-sized business owner, focus on the name tag and then move on to the logo stuff when you have the resources and the bandwidth in order to do so. But that's my opinion. I know, Travis, it's different from your side of the playing field because you do have an email service provider. So you're like, God damn right, we're gonna get a BEMI. We're gonna go all the way.
Yeah, well, what's interesting is it's an evolving standard, right? And so I do think you're right. I think there will be components of it that will be easier to attain over time, but that's not about making the barrier to entry lower. It's about making it streamlined to prove that you are who you say you are easier. That is the core difference, right? Because if you water it down, it loses its potency, right? But if you can speed run to cherry pick people who are real and get them to where they need to be faster, that is a net benefit. And I think a peek into the future of where that might be going, let's look at Apple Business Connect, which has a BEMI-like service. where you can actually go in and configure and get approved a brand, which can work across all Apple services, right? Even outside of the realm of just email. And then you can get your email configuration approved separately. And what's cool about that is it doesn't require a trademark, but you get the brand approved in roughly 5 business days, and you can get your sending domain approved in roughly 7 business days. So within just a couple weeks, you can have a human review to see, does this pass the smell test? Does it look legit? And if you pass both of those on Apple products, which is not insignificant, doesn't necessarily mean Apple emails, but on Apple products in Apple Mail, you can look and appear legit because it has gone through a human review. And you can imagine that that's going to start to matter when individual email clients, beyond just mailbox services, but email clients, so in this case, Apple Mail, decide who to sort and where to put them. This is, I think, an interesting sort of test about, can we speed run the legitimacy test about getting people to look and be real because we've vetted it, but we've done it in a way that doesn't require waiting a year for your U.S. Patent and Trademark Office to approve your logo. So I think it's going to get worked out. I think the timeline is going to get collapsed. I think the price point is going to come down because the Apple one, for example, is free, right? Filing a trademark is a couple $1,000. Paying for the certificate is $1,500 a year. Like it's not nothing, depending on who you are. So it'll evolve. But if you have the means and if email is an important channel for you, I would highly encourage looking at these steps, putting in motion so that you're basically banking on, hey, I think this is going to be important in the future. And if it becomes important, and if they have not yet streamlined when the rest of the 98 or 99% of the world decide that it's important, I'm not at the back of the queue, right?
Yeah.
And so that's why I'm saying I'm all in. And I think that people should start taking the steps, especially if you're a bigger sender, towards getting this authentication closer to where it needs to be. Even if it doesn't make a night and day difference today, it's going to make more of a difference in the future, and you don't want to be at the back of the line.
Yeah, I agree on that.
Cool. All right. Well, again, we have a full-length article linked down below. But David, if someone wants to do all this authentication stuff because they're worried about growing and scaling their newsletter, how do they find out what's what?
Yeah, absolutely. So obviously, I mean, Travis has incredible resources on all of this authentication stuff. But if you are trying to clean up your newsletter because you are ready to exit it and sell it to an investor, you can hop over to wealthyinbox.news, and there's plenty of resources and articles and newsletters around selling your newsletter. And part of this authentication stuff, this is something that they probably are going to ask for and they're going to look for, because they ain't going to buy a newsletter if it's just going to the spam folder. Believe you me. I've seen it, and it's pretty comical. They think it's worth millions of dollars and it's not even hitting the inbox.
Running a newsletter without the authentication step is like trying to sell a house without building permits.
Thank you. That's it. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for being here, David. As he mentioned, we got lots of resources down below. Our articles about authentication, several of them. And if you're curious about our DMARC tools or really running an email program the right way, we have a link for that as well. So thanks for your time, and we'll talk to you guys soon.